20 million views would be a disappointing sort of size of a video. We have a handful on our channel that are in the 2 billion view range and several that are over 1 billion views. So yeah, anything less than over the life of the video, 100 million is on the lower side.
We're back at Creator Generation. We've got Shannon Jones, who is a long-time listener of the podcast, I hear, Shannon. Big fan.
Hi. Yes, big fan.
And that's the number one reason why we have you on the show. Number two is you are, I guess, what do we call you? The creator behind Bounce Patrol, one of the biggest channels in the world?
Every time someone asks me to describe that, it changes. But yeah, I usually say the creator behind Bounce Patrol.
Yeah, cool. The creator mastermind. She's, I like that. And Bounce Patrol. Let's why don't you do it better than me? You tell us what's Bounce Patrol, because it's a pretty epic channel.
Bounce Patrol, we make original music and videos for young kids, and we aim to get them up and bouncing. So the songs are lively and dance-centric and usually have an educational element, and we love to get kids on their feet and bouncing along with us. And it's named after that move that little kids do when a song comes on that they love, even when they're too young to even necessarily dance or walk even, they will bounce up and down like, this is my jam. So it's named after getting kids moving and bopping along.
And having a 3.5-year-old, I can attest that she does indeed bounce to...
Bounces to Bounce Patrol, yeah. So there's 5 performers in the show, so it's all shot on a green screen, but we have our live action performers who are singing the songs and doing the dance moves that we're hoping to get kids to mimic. And yeah, we have fully illustrated worlds that's different for each video.
And it's big. It's big.
It's
yeah. Huge.
It's the biggest in Australia. We have 25 million subscribers. Whoa. And we just passed 18 billion views.
Billion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, we've had you on in one of our very early episodes, and it was a very popular episode. And you were big then, but the channel is just enormous now. It's like a global leader on YouTube, one of the biggest channels on YouTube, and they've obviously developed a lot since then. Yeah,
I mean we had quite a wave of viewership over COVID, obviously, because all families were at home looking for ways to engage while they were working from home, and the kids were in the background as well. So COVID was a really interesting time for kids' channels in general. We definitely saw 2020 and 2021 being a huge increase in viewership. And that's tapered off a little bit now, but it's still obviously the growth that we had during that stage. We've built a much bigger audience, and a lot of them have stuck around with us, even though kids are allowed outdoors again now, which is awesome. So yeah, we've grown a lot over. I mean, we've been doing it for 10 years. This is our 10th year that we're in now, coming up to the decade anniversary. So yeah, it's been slow and steady growth most of that time, except for a few moments where we had big growth spurts. And then obviously 2020 was another one of those big growth spurt moments for us. So touching base over the last 3 years, it's been a little bit of a wild ride.
I mean, I like how you say slow and steady. I mean, I think compared to a lot of channels, it's not super slow in terms of the growth. I remember last time when we were talking to you, and we were asking about, what's a normal video look like in terms of viewership compared to a bad video. I think that sort of set the tone as to what your channel was like and what's normal and what's not normal. I'll let you say that again so people who didn't hear that.
Yeah, I mean, 20 million views would be a disappointing sort of size of a video. We have a handful on our channel that are in the 2 billion view range, and several that are over 1 billion views. So yeah, anything less than over the life of the video, 100 million is on the lower side.
Oh my God, I need an emergency session with my therapist.
Sorry. Just can you say that again? Just anything that's
under 100 million views would be on the lower side.
Okay, that should be on a shirt. Like, that is quite a number on 100 million views, right? But I think when I met you last time, it was like, anything under 20 million was a failure, and I think Ant and I both had minor conniptions, and then now you're like 100 million. That's your new mark.
Yep. But it also, that's part of our content strategy, right? We don't make a huge number of videos. We make a smaller number of videos that are going to be evergreen and that hopefully kids are going to want to watch every day. So I think that's quite a difference when you're making kids content versus when you're making grown-ups content. Something that we try and do. And there are grown-up channels that take this approach as well. I'd rather have one big video and spend a lot of energy and effort into that. So we make probably about one a month. We probably only make about 12 videos a year, but we put a lot of time and energy into each one of those videos and then try to each time get something that's going to be a big hero video. And not every video is like that. We have certain ones that we know are going to be algorithm candy, and then other ones that we're using as part of our programming that's more to round out our channel. And so that's, for example, a lot more of the educational content. We really want to have that on there, but that's not something that's going to draw in viewers in the same way, Old MacDonald Had a Farm is going to. So we bring them into the channel with Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and then when they're there, we teach them counting.
Hey, I just want to interrupt here to remind everyone we have set up this awesome thing. It's the Creator Generation Discord community. That's right. We're a bit slow to the Discord party, but this place is set up for you, for the creators of the world. So we have creators big and small. We're here to help you, help each other grow, succeed, and thrive. Jump on the link below. We'll see you in there, the Discord community. We've got some pretty cool stuff happening on over there. So, including our special guest at podcast I've interrupted with, Shannon Jones. She's hanging out in there too. So come and say hi. All right, back to the podcast.
It's oh god, there's so many things to unpick. I mean, we won't hear from Phoebe for the next 20 minutes because she's still picking herself up from the floor.
Yeah.
As a fellow YouTuber there, just sort of like.
No. I'm going to cozy up with my journal and just try and work through it.
It's the kind of numbers, we have more viewership on a monthly basis than some of the large TV stations in Australia, for instance. So our viewer numbers are sort of on a global scale.
I should probably point out that you probably have more viewership than the entire Australian TV network.
Yep.
So rather than just a station, I think that's probably more accurate. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, look, I'm just going to jump in and ask. So what do you think has led to this immense success? Like, how did you get from obviously 0 to where you are right now?
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, it's a journey, and you spoke to me a few years ago when we weren't at the kind of numbers that we're at now, and so every stage is different, and you build on the stage before. I think our growth in particular, growth begets growth in some ways, like success builds on itself. So it has sped up as we've got bigger and bigger. So the time it took us to get from 0 subscribers to 1,000, and then from 1,000 to 10,000, that was probably about the same. And then about the same amount of time to get from 10,000 to 100,000, which was, another year. And then it probably took us a year to get from 100,000 to 1 million. So each time, those milestones are actually only taking about a year, even though you're 10xing the audience size each time. So it's a bit of a snowball. Once you get to a certain size, when we upload a video now, we know that it's going to get a certain amount of viewership because we have a huge audience built in. And also because we have so many views on a daily basis. If we upload a new video, everyone who's watching one of our previous videos is going to get the new one recommended immediately. So once you're at a certain size, it also sort of is a bit of a self-fulfilling cycle. That's not to say it's easy once you get to that size, because you still got to be making great videos, but it does help and continues to kind of grow on itself.
It's fascinating because you hear this and it makes perfect sense, but it still feels almost unbelievably out of reach. How do you break that down so that someone starting today can see that this opportunity does exist, maybe, and whether it's a kid's channel or a travel channel? Or
well, definitely it's easier in the kids space. the kids space is different because kids watch the thing that they love over and over and over again. They're not always hungry for a piece of content that they haven't seen. So that does make a difference in terms of the content strategy. But also the numbers that we're doing now are not something that was achievable when I first started. So one of the things when I first started my channel, I looked at the largest kids channel on the platform and the viewership that they were getting and thought, okay, that's the size of the pie, right? Like that's the ocean that we're swimming in. That's the sort of pinnacle of what you can reach. And if I could get to 50% of that size, that would be great. And at the time I was looking at, I'd love to be able to do 10 million views a month, 50 million views a month, something like that. That was the maximum sort of size that I thought was achievable. Since then, the audience, in the 10 years since then, the audience of kids on YouTube coming to the platform using YouTube to watch content every day has massively grown. And so the size of the ocean that we're swimming in now has massively grown as well. And so my sort of calculation of what I think of is achievable has actually grown as we've grown as well, because the platform has continued to grow. So where I set my sights when we started, I have eclipsed that 10 times over. But that, turning back the clock, I would still be ecstatic with having achieved any of those milestones along the way.
I mean, talking about getting to those milestones, like obviously you did grow rapidly in that time, but was there a point where you looked at it and something happened and you said, wow, we're actually onto something here, or this is going to be big?
Yeah, I think there were a few of those points. They're not really obvious points though. Like, I think looking back, you think, wow, the choices that I made at those points, it was really obvious that something was going to be big, and so we should take the plunge into what the next step should be. But at the time, they're always a little bit murky, those decisions that you're making. So we had a couple of hit videos, and that helped. We'd have stable growth, and then you'd have a big jump, and then we'd have stable growth and then a big jump based on when you had a new hero video kind of hit. And it became obvious probably about 2 years in was when we broke even, I would say, because I was investing a lot of obviously time, but also capital into growing the channel, because we produce original music for every video. And that's, that is quite expensive to do. So we, at a certain point, it kind of became self-sustaining, and that was one point in the trajectory where that was a really exciting moment. And then there was another moment where it became clear, okay, we're going to go rent a studio space. We need to have a permanent home. Originally we were shooting things on a green screen in the spare room at my mum's house kind of thing, and that's when you're doing smell of an oily rag kind of scale of production. Then you get to the point where you're like, right, we're going to purpose build a space. And then we got an office and kept scaling up, and all of those things happened a few years in between all of those different milestones. But at each one of those points, it wasn't obvious that that was the right decision to make. It was just, okay, I think we can take the plunge on making that next step. And looking back in the rear view mirror, most of those turned out to be great decisions, but you don't know that at the time.
In terms of something else I want to ask you about is, I mean, we're not going to go specifically into content strategies, but I would want to ask you about Baby Shark, right? Because Baby Shark is a very popular song.
It's a phenomenon.
Kids, lamented probably amongst parents, but it's one of those things that is incredible. And your version is one of the biggest.
Yeah, I think it's the second biggest. We have 2 billion views on that video.
2 billion.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those songs where there were a lot of versions on YouTube, and so we knew doing our version, if we could do it well, it had the potential to be huge. And so we spent a lot of time and energy thinking about that video in particular and what our approach would be, what makes ours unique. And one of the things that's unique about our channel amongst kids' channels is that we're live action, that we have real people, and that we're dance-centric. So we wrote some original verses with new choreography. We made sure that choreography was kind of core of the part of the video that we were doing, because there's a lot of animated versions as well. And then we tested it with kids to see what they liked about it, and then re-edit it. And yeah, had success with our version. And since then, we've made many versions of it. So that's the other thing. Our big video became a hero, and so we used that formula many times.
It's funny, Ant and I actually met the Pink Fong guys years and years ago, before it was a massive hit. And I remember they played it as an example. And I remember listening to this song, and I didn't have kids at the time, I don't think. No, I didn't. And thinking, I said, wow, this is a really catchy song. And I looked it up on YouTube, and I played it for my nephews, and they were like hooked on it. And their mum hated me immediately. But, you were really hooked, and I'm like, this is a big song.
I have a confession, and that's that a lot of this, you're speaking a language that's new to me. I'm a childless wench. I only have cats as children. I don't know about the origin. All I know is there's H song and someone sings about a baby shark. This is like a different language to me, but I feel like I'm about to mess up my algorithm and go and watch a lot of baby shark videos and like cyberstalk Shannon a bit more and just, really get some kids content.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you fall down that rabbit hole, I apologize. It will be stuck in your head for 2 weeks at least. It's very catchy.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
It's dangerously catchy.
It really, really is.
Well, I do have one question.
Yeah. Well, then I guess
If that's acceptable.
Yeah.
So
More than acceptable.
thank goodness. So Shannon, you were talking about how there was a point where you felt like the growth that you've experienced and where you are right now is completely unattainable. Myself and many other people listening will definitely say that they feel that same way. It feels so far beyond me at the moment. And I work in a very different space to you. I work in the travel space. So what is something or a couple of things that people like myself, creators in general, can do to kind of set themselves up for success? Maybe not quite the dizzying highs of Bounce Patrol, but, just success in general.
Yeah, well, I always thought of the success in terms of what's achievable in my niche as well. So one of the things that I would do is look at other kids' channels and say, okay, what is the scale? What does a really successful channel in that space look like? What are their numbers? What's a medium level successful channel in that space? What are their numbers? And set my goals around that. So rather than looking at the biggest channels on the platform, if you're not making content like Mr. Beast, don't compare the scale that you want to get to be Mr. Beast numbers. And if you're not making kids content, don't compare the numbers to what is achievable in kids content, because that's not relevant, right? Yeah. So thinking about your market as a whole and looking at the size of the achievable audience in my market is this, I think I have the capability and creativity to get to being at least halfway up the ladder of what is achievable in my market, and then set your first goal there. And then maybe the stretch goal is to get to be the absolute biggest channel in your market, but that's not the biggest channel on YouTube, because that's different according to every niche. And so that was always the way that I thought about it. And I had to recalibrate that a few times because the scale of the audience was growing. But I was always really I had a great sense of satisfaction with achieving each of the milestones that we were at, because I knew where we were sitting in terms of sort of other competitor channels in the space, I guess, and being realistic about what the numbers should be at a particular point in growth as well. So if you're a year into making video content and you're comparing yourself to someone who's been doing it for 10 years, say, even if they're in your niche, well, that's not realistic, because it takes time to grow an audience. Yeah. And so what's realistic after 1 year of content in my niche, and then look at that goal. And you might be much closer to that than you think you are. But if you just look at the sky and say, why haven't I reached the moon yet? Then you're always going to be disappointing yourself.
And that is an issue we see with a lot of creators. Is they're like, I'm not as big as X or Y, but like every single segment is different, and there are different audiences and different sizes of audiences dependent on the topic, right? Like we give that example of, I think, soccer versus dressage, right? Like there's going to be probably a bigger audience for YouTube content on
dressage.
Soccer than there is going to be on dressage. And shocked, like, what? My love, my hobby.
For those who aren't actually watching and are only listening, there was a big eye roll there from Ant.
I don't know if the eye roll was to be with the fact that he was shocked about dressage, or he was shocked about the example being used. I'm not sure.
I don't know either, but I used to ride the horses. I actually used to do the dressage.
Old Town Road.
Yep.
You used to do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I did. I did play soccer too, or football for the Euros.
Yeah. Well, let's just assume that more people have access to soccer than they do to horses.
Dressage soccer. Now that's a niche.
That is a niche. That is an underserved market, I believe.
All 5 people are not getting into the YouTube content.
You'd be surprised. Every niche that you can possibly mention, you think that's got to be 5 people, and then you'd be completely surprised about in however many billion people there are on the planet, just how many might be interested in dressage soccer.
Is that not polo?
There you go.
in a
It's like
sense?
polo, but better.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is in a way. Maybe that's polo. That was polo. Somebody who invented polo was like, I really like red dressage.
This is how
I
polo
like
was
soccer.
invented. Someone was sitting there going, let's just put these two amazing things together, and polo was born.
Oh gosh, we've unpacked it. It's happened.
It's time for Creator of the Month. Creator of the Month, what the hell is that? Well, it's a new thing, but it's an awesome thing. We are spotlighting one rad creator from the community, and that is Jekka Magenta. Jekka does these really great art and creativity videos on YouTube, and she's on a whole bunch of others like Insta. So check her out. We really want to celebrate creators big and small here in Creator Generation, and those creators that are bringing positivity to the creator community. And Jekka's been popping off on the Creator Generation Discord. And so if you know that creator that deserves to be put up in lights, or you might be that creator, let us know. Jump on our socials or jump on Discord. Super easy to nominate yourself or someone else. And we want to help celebrate this awesome creator community. So nominate for the next Creator Generation Creator of the Month. All right, back to the podcast.
But look, it does come down to managing expectations. Like there will be different caps at different sizes, and you can't compare. It's not apples to apples, is it?
Yeah. And also the business model differs in different markets as well. So in the kids space, like one of the core revenue models is going to be AdSense. And so scalable view numbers is an important part of that. If you're in a different niche where you only need a core community of 1,000 people who are actually going to convert into your other business revenue models because they want to buy your course or whatever, come to your training sessions, or you're a brand account, and so really you're just building awareness of the product, something like that, then having billions of views is not important as much in terms of what your key goal, what your key metric should be in terms of what you're trying to achieve on the platforms that you're on. So I think just looking at view numbers as a goal is also a bit of a wrong steer unless viewership specifically is what's driving the core of your business.
Then can I just jump in here and just so like, you said it's somewhat easier on a kid's channel to grow big view numbers, but it's super crowded. Like it seems from the outside looking in from a lot of people, and I know this isn't true, that it's kind of simple. Like you sing the same song, Baby Shark, or all the current, the same sort of riffs you put up there, and that's the same with like Mr. Beast. It's just like crazy challenges and competitions. Like, what is it that you like? Maybe not Mr. Beast, but like people looking at these, like you guys. Like, what is it then that you're doing different, or is that the secret sauce that like we?
I think that is the secret sauce. I mean, you have to make amazing content as well. Like, I think there are a lot of people who have entered the space and who have done very well, and then there's other people who've entered the space and have not done very well. And if you look at their two types of content, I think you can usually see why if you pull apart, like, what is it about that content? Like, I spend a lot of time and energy working with toddlers and watching them watch content and to see what they like and what they don't like, what they respond to, what gets them so excited that they have to stand up and start clapping and jumping. So it's those kinds of things. It's being passionate about your topic as well. And I think that comes through on screen. So for us in particular, we're all mates and we're all having a great laugh in between takes. And I think that kind of chemistry comes through on screen, hopefully. So that's part of what our niche is. But then for any kind of channel, it's about, if you're really passionate about the thing that you're talking about, usually audiences can see that. If you come into a channel because you just want to grow a big channel and not because you care about this topic and you care about the community and you care about the audience, it's much harder, I think, when you approach it from that kind of mechanical perspective to say, right, I'm just looking for the formula that's going to be big content. I think passion behind content usually is a large component of success as well.
Well, it's obviously done very well for you. The channel is a giant, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And I think what we really want to sort of cover as well is this aspect of being the biggest. Like, what is the business of being a big YouTuber look like?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's similar to the business of being a medium-sized YouTuber. I think a lot of the business structures and things that you have to work out when you first go professional, like so when you first decide to leave your 9 to 5 to become a full-time creator, a lot of those things that you have to work out at that stage are the same when you're the largest channel in Australia. They're just at a slightly larger scale. So, you know, those things like, who am I going to hire to help me with this? How am I going to find that person? It's still those concerns. It's just that now that you have a bigger team, and the same kind of things around, do I get support for different, you know, like, do I need a manager to help me with contracts or negotiations or other things like that? Those concerns still come up. It's just that the scale of the opportunities and things that you're negotiating grow. So there's some scaling issues in terms of workflow for us. So when we're hiring a team and getting people more involved in the content creation process, one of the things that we sort of needed to work through is when it was a solo creator, so I was doing essentially many pieces of the production workflow from start to finish. If we're hiring people, do we try and replicate someone who's taking a video from ideation all the way through to completion? So they're doing part of the music production, they're doing the direction, they're doing the video editing, they're working with the illustrator all the way through. Or do we hire specialists to do each of those things? So do you have a department who's the music department, a department who's the video editing department, a department who's the director in studio, that kind of thing? And we've tried different approaches, and we sort of do a little bit of both. So now we have kind of a music arm of the business, and then that's handed over to the video team. But once we have the video team, ideation all the way through to actually doing the edit is the same person generally, because we found when you split up who's conceptualizing the video and who's directing the video and who's editing the video, there's a bit of a disconnect along the way on some of those things. But it depends on your content type whether that's going to work or not. So there's some things to do with like scaling production that that are different challenges as you scale bigger. Surprisingly, not that much is different. It's just everything at a larger scale.
And you're not in the videos, so
I am not.
Do you get recognised on the street, like when you rock into VidCon, like the big show at VidCon? And I know you've done, I think, 9 in a row. I think we were talking about that.
I have. Well,
like,
if you count Australia as well, I think I've done 11 VidCons. 11,
and like, are you rocking the main floor there, getting mobbed? Like a 25 million plus subscriber, billions of views. Like, you must have like a security entourage, right? Like,
I've never been recognised once for Bounce Patrol in my life. I have a very low profile because I'm not in the show, and most people wouldn't even sort of think about who is the creator behind that, because you don't, when you watch the show, you see the 5 performers and it's a music video, and so you don't necessarily take a step back and think, oh, who directed that? Yeah. So it's not something that's immediately obvious. And I occasionally make cameos, but yeah, no one's ever recognized me.
What about the Fab Five? Do they get like?
Not very often. So the amazing thing about once they're just in their normal everyday look without the makeup and the hair and the costume, they sort of, you would have to do a double take to be like, hang on, is that person from Bounce Patrol? So very occasionally it happens, but infrequently, only a few times a year do they get recognised.
And do you miss that silver service of just rocking up to the bar and
no,
not getting that? Like,
we're very happy to be anonymous. We're happy to not be recognised. It's fine. I mean, that's.
Don't you know who I am?
I am Bounce Patrol. No, it's fine. I'm happy with my quiet little anonymity, and most people not realising down the street that there goes Australia's largest YouTuber.
Because we'll have to get Moog on, Fred, from Mighty Car Mods. He tells a fantastic story. Yeah. I don't know, Shannon, if you've met him, like, and talked to those guys, but about getting mobbed. I won't tell too much. Mobbed in the street in LA just because they were recognised, and like literally a riot, and they were like on top of a car trying to hide from the crowd, and the LAPD had to come in and like break up this massive riot in the street because they were recognised and so loved.
It's so funny because as you were talking, Shannon, I was actually just remembering that scene. Like they showed the video of it, and it was crazy.
that?
Like it was insane. And I don't think they thought they were as big as they were, and they were obviously nowhere near as large as you are now. But it does happen. I mean, there's other creator we work with who literally he cannot go out in public in the country he's from because he just gets mobbed all the time. And he's just like, no, I have to stay here, or no one can find out. Or when they're traveling for social media, they'll make sure there's a delay in post so people can't know where he is in order to make that happen. And end of the day, like there is massive popularity around it, and that's also a channel that's obviously nowhere near your size, but still extremely popular.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky in that sense that we don't tend to get recognised. But also the fans being kids, I don't think you'd necessarily get the same mob approach. But yeah, we all went to Sydney last weekend all together. And so all 5 of them were there in Sydney for the whole weekend, and we were going out and doing different things. And I think once you have all 5 together, I think, the likelihood of being recognised is then like, wow, no, that's definitely them because that's all 5 of them. Did not get recognised once. So we hit we were walking around Sydney for a couple of days, and at no point did we get approached by anyone. We might have got recognised but not approached. That's the other thing that could be going on.
Walking around Sydney Harbour with like big, baby shark costumes.
And
no one.
Yeah. Surprising, right?
Disappointing.
Well, there are some, there are some exciting stories, but like, what are some of the not so great parts of being as big as you are?
It's all roses. This is great.
It's all rosy.
It's all good.
It's all rosy.
Is there a lot of pressure though, Shannon? Is that a part of it? You feel a lot of I would feel a lot of pressure at that kind of height. I would be like, woof. It's a lot of
There definitely is. There definitely is a lot of pressure every time you publish a video, because when you first start publishing videos and you think, only so many people are going to see this, so if there's a mistake in there, it's not like it's going to be a massive problem. I could always take it down and redo it or something like that. Or if it's a massive failure, if that video is a flop, it's not going to be epically embarrassing because we only have an audience of 10,000 subscribers. They're not going to mind. They're really supportive anyway. When you have an audience of 25 million subscribers and hundreds of millions of people watching, it's really hard to hit publish. Because you worry that there might be a typo in there, and then it's got 200 million views and you can't do anything about it. And it's hard to hit publish too, just because if it's a flop, everyone's going to know. It's quite embarrassing. And so, there's definitely a lot more pressure that comes from everyone's expecting big things from you, and everyone expects every video that you publish to be absolutely amazing. And if it doesn't live up to that expectation, you're like, sorry, I've got to try again next week. So that is challenging, but that's a very champagne problem, it's really hard. The pressure of everyone expecting me to do so well because normally my videos do so well. So I'm aware that that's a very privileged problem.
How do you feel, Phoebe, when you're hitting upload? Like, what's that feel like?
I feel nothing, Ant. I'm asleep. Matt does it.
Okay.
I've only got I'm only disappointing 5 people. My mum's one of them. My dad's the other.
Don't be like that. That's not true.
No, it's not true.
But are you guys are pretty relaxed about it? You're confident? You're not sweating on it? Nervous? I know some creators can't sleep the day of an upload or the night of an upload, or they.
No, I get super excited. It feels like
they need a hype
friends.
team.
Yeah. No, it feels like these people are my friends. And we have the same people who comment every week, and I get so excited to put the video up for them. And I wake up the next morning and I instantly refresh that Creator Studio comments section because I want to see, did Felix like it? Did he enjoy it? How was his trip to Spain that he was taking? Did Harriet and Jim watch it? What did they think? Have they been there? I don't know. It's like you're friends. So I get really excited about it.
I like that.
Do you miss those simpler days, Shannon? The simpler days of couple of.
You miss.
I mean, yes and no. We don't. We don't really have any sense of what our audience thinks of it because we don't have any comments. So there's no way to interact with the audience on YouTube because it's made for kids content. So in some ways that's bad, but in some ways that's delightful because there's no more hate when you.
There's no comments on your videos because it's.
There is no comments on made for kids content.
Come on.
There's no comments at all.
I'm getting roasted alive out here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no comments, there's no community tab, there's anything that involves interaction with your audience is turned off.
I'm changing.
So there's no way for
I'm
them
changing.
to communicate with us or us to communicate with them other than a video.
Do you need a sixth member?
And now also being so being so big though, do you get any special treatment from YouTube or the platforms? Does anyone go into, hey, we need to give them more attention or something like anything like that?
Not specifically, no. I mean, I do have the phone numbers of some people at YouTube that I can call if I need to, which is great, but I very rarely need to. And we, generally speaking, like once you get to a certain size, like in working with our partner manager, for instance, you know, he's very much like, okay, well, you kind of know all of this already. So, you know, like in terms of what they can offer us in terms of support about using the platform, if we do ever have like a technical issue, it's great to be able to just get in contact with my contact person and say, hey, there's a glitch. Can you fix it, please? And they're I think they move us up a priority list. They have not confirmed that, but I think we usually get a response pretty quickly. And that's great, but that is very rare. And in general, there isn't, you know, I don't have access to YouTube in some major way.
I mean, look, we work with some really big creators, and it's interesting when you get to that level. Usually the advice or help they need is really specific. It's no longer like, oh, you know, how do thumbnails and titles work? I mean, sometimes it is, but generally it's a lot more specific and a lot more strategic. Where would you say, like, someone like you of your size would need assistance and help?
On YouTube specifically, or
just generally as a YouTube business?
Yeah, as a YouTube business, a lot of the things that we think about at grand scale now are strategic things. So, for instance, you know, we're thinking about what does the rise of TikTok mean in terms of is that going to be the biggest video platform in the world in the next 3 years, and what does that mean for kids content, and what does that mean for where we need to be in the space? What does the future of audio as a internet model and platform mean in terms of where people are consuming their content and the kinds of content people want to consume, and what does that mean from a business perspective? So a lot of the things that we think deeply about now are not necessarily content specific to YouTube. It's sort of the broader business as a whole, and thinking a lot about the future of digital platforms, digital media. Where is the industry moving to? What do we need to do to be on top of those moves, and making sure that we're still at the top of the game when the game has changed and continues to change every year.
Where do you get those insights? Like, are you just making this up or talking to people?
Yeah, you sit with the slippers on and have a deep think. Yeah, it's also networking, talking to a lot of other big creators. Usually, those are the kinds of topics that we're thinking about. So, talking to peers, talking to people like yourselves, going to conferences, things like that. Those are the topics that tend to be, you know, the interesting thought space that people are trying to figure out. And I think everyone doesn't know the answer, and that's what's really exciting but also challenging about it. You know, like, what is the future of shorts on YouTube? Everyone's still trying to work out the answer to that question, and how you respond to it strategically is more interesting than what thumbnail do I actually need to think about this week for my piece of content.
And look, here is a question I think everyone would be thinking about and wanting to ask you. And I know we get asked about it all the time for creators of all sizes, but like, what does the revenue model look like? What is the potential in terms of monetization? Does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we're doing very well in terms of how the business flows. I think one way to answer that would be in terms of like how many salaries we pay. So we have about 10 people that we employ. And so we are like at a scale where that's really sustainable in terms of being able to have that many people on staff. The revenue model for us is largely driven by AdSense, but we're made for kids content. So obviously that you need to take into consideration the fact that the ad rates are, you know, as much as 10 times lower than they are per view on grown-ups content. But at the kind of scale that we're at, we can still make those numbers work. And also we're growing on a lot of other platforms as well. So we're the third biggest Australian children's music act on Spotify, for instance, and we're growing our music audience as well. So continuing to kind of build in a lot of those areas as well.
So what then is the potential? Like, where can you take it apart from AdSense? What's the next step for someone like you guys?
In terms of made for kids content specifically?
Yeah, well, yeah, specifically for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the next biggest achievable piece for us is continuing to grow on music platforms and our secondary video distribution platforms. So there's a lot of other video platforms that host children's content that is more curated than YouTube is. So, Netflix is an example, right? Cocomelon is the biggest show on Netflix. It's bigger than Bridgerton and Squid Game and what have you. Like it is their largest viewership. I'm pretty sure. I need to check that, but I'm pretty sure that's true, that's got the biggest viewership. So, for example, there are other places where kids' content can be hosted, and Cocomelon, for those who don't know, was a YouTube-first brand and has now been picked up on some of those other platforms. We are not on Netflix, but we are on some other kids' video platforms as well. So that's another area that we sort of grow. Live, although for us and with COVID and everything, that's not something that we're pursuing at the moment, but live for kids brands in particular. And then also the traditional way that kids media makes revenue is through licensing and merchandising. So if you think of, Disney being the biggest kids property in the world, and a larger portion of their revenue comes from selling toys than it does from selling movies. So the traditional way that kids brands make revenue is through licensing and merchandising, and there is a lot more digital creators who are entering that space. That's not something that we're currently pursuing, but that's another area in the future.
Look, we are running out of time, but I want to sort of ask one more question. And I guess it comes from the point of view, there are a lot of creators who are starting at zero, and they see or hear about creators like yourself who have astronomical viewership. That feels a bit daunting. But at some point, I sort of want the viewers to imagine that you were sitting there with 0 subscribers and 0 views, and you were thinking, what do I do now? Right?
Yes, exactly.
And what advice would you give someone at that point?
Well, first of all, just start, because you can always later take down that first 1 or 2 videos. Yeah. I think the hardest part is actually making content to begin with and taking your idea from something that you think this could be a really cool idea into I've actually made some videos. Getting the ball rolling is the hardest part. And I spent a long time on the first couple of videos. So from when we actually filmed them to when we launched the channel, because I had 3 or 4 ready to go so that there wouldn't be 1 video and then 2 months with nothing. And so I worked on the content behind the scenes before we launched. But even then, it was hard to press upload the first time, right? Because you're like, oh, I've prepared all this stuff, but like, what's going to happen? And so I think just getting over that initial hurdle of being brave enough to press upload, because no one's going to watch it. When you have 0 subscribers and 0 views, like, don't be disheartened. Your mum's going to love it, but very few people are going to watch that video. So just take the pressure off yourself and just start. And until you've got a few videos up, that's when it's going to start getting viewership and scale anyway. So don't worry too much about the first few.
I love that.
Awesome. Shannon, thanks so much
you.
again for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Create a generation. Look on the mic.